Back again, Paul Duffy, CEO of AI ML Innovations, and Hassan Khan, who is the co-founder and CEO of TODAQ. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Paul?
Good to see you again, Karl.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's get into it. So can you sort of explain your micropayment platform?
Yeah, I'd love to. This has been a 30-year dream in the making. We're not the first to try it. Yeah. About 100 did before us. They all failed. It's really around solving the problem of access to services in an efficient pay-as-you-go manner that can be done with just one tap, which is what our product's called. Think about everything on the internet: healthcare, education, publishing, music, videos. It's all subscription. It's all paywall. And it's all at a price point where most of the market that's interested gets shut out. Because you might look and say, I want a bit of a healthcare service. I want a bit of that article. But the second you see the subscription and the paywall and the lock-in, like 99 or more out of 100 people, you drop out. And what Tap Micropayments is about is it doesn't have to be that way. You show up and you have something you need and you just tap. The merchant or the platform or the provider, they get paid in the next few seconds. And they can do the same in the next few seconds after that for their suppliers. And that's where the market access increases, because with all of these digital subscription models, it's usually what? 1-2% of the market that actually signs up. The other 98% is shut out. Right. And we're about making sure that they can get access to the services they need.
So pretty easy to see how it's a game changer in the world, because now service providers, people that are selling products and services, can come up with something where, hey, you know what, instead of packaging it this way with that price point, now we got to kind of think, well, we can get so much more of the market share if we come up and introduce our services in a different way, where that people can just get a piece of it now based on whatever reason. It could be that's all they can afford, and then it makes it easier for them to just pay.
Absolutely. And that was part of what brought us and Paul and AI/ML together. Think of healthcare and how many people, as an example, for something like blood pressure or high blood pressure related ailments need access to services. I think the number is over 1 billion, but when you get very expensive telehealth and digital health subscription products, most of those billion are shut out of the market. And imagine just with micropayments, you can take a good service to say, great, I can get a service, I can get access to a high fidelity ECG file as my own electronic health record, and I can just tap and get that for cents. Well, that's a great outcome for patients and everybody.
Well, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about how you got into this. You're the co-founder, but I want to sort of now talk about the partnership with AI/ML in your company. How did that even come about?
I think that was a little natural. Look, we spent 6 years on some really deep tech R&D trying to solve this problem. And once we got out the door, it sounded almost a little too good to be true. So good partners to start with who will adopt things first. They're technically savvy. They know a lot about their market, what their customers, what their patients need. And they're willing to move early and fast. And AI/ML was exactly one of those kind of partners. We're very happy to have them there, as well as a broad spread in sort of other verticals where we're doing the same thing. So it was a little bit of serendipity in terms of how that connection was happened. But I think those qualities are what made the partnership come about.
Okay. And Paul, where do you see the value here?
Well, I think it's extraordinary on a couple of levels. The first is what Hassan and company have been able to do. And I mean, he says it, I'll just say very politely, but they've cracked the code on what has been a phenomenal roadblock for companies of all size, but small and medium specifically. When you talk about addressing a market, the 98% that goes, quote, underserved, yet they want, the aperture now for what is open because of micropayments is extraordinary. Because when you look at the pyramid, the top 2% are paying, while a majority, is particularly the base, which want it, can't get access to it. And this is evident in healthcare on a global level. And so we spoke earlier about AI/ML and it's having a thrust of both social good as well as economic good. Micropayments is an enabler across both.
Right.
Now, not only can we take, to Hassan's example, a micropayment for access to a rich time series data, not a little measurement off your iWatch, but off of one of our smart sensors, and use that as a component for charting in your EMR, your electronic medical record. And then you literally pay pennies for access to that to use it elsewhere, to your physician, to your rehab, to your pharmacy, to maybe somebody who you're working with, right? So huge value there. But then when we step beyond that use case and into parts of our country, of the US and other geographies that don't have access to quality health care because it's too cost prohibitive, we can now go in and literally piecemeal components of that through micropayment. It's a phenomenal breakthrough, and I'm personally very vested and interested in seeing where it's going, not just from an AIML point of view, but working with Hassan and his team, it's evident these guys have taken the high ground, and I think this is just the first of many announcements we'll be making together as we work. Yeah.
So Paul uses the term cracking the code. You mentioned earlier that you're not the only ones that have done this. So what have you done differently? How did you co-found this? Take me back.
This is a fascinating story.
Take me back to the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, the motivation to go do something or try and do something impossible, it comes because you experience the problem yourself. And just kind of following up with what Paul said, I mean, even on my own, having gone through the healthcare system for various ailments, I found myself that I wasn't taking advantage of the services that I should be getting simply because either the pain of going through X number of digital steps or whatever all these problems were, I wasn't getting access to the services. I was like, well, this is solving my own problem too, and we can help everyone else. The vision that the creators of the web and all the internet consortiums and the first .com companies had, and it was even written into the standards of the web back at the time, was that you'd be able to go to a website and just see what you wanted, and you tap and you pay for it. Mm-hmm. Even if it was a discrete piece of digital service and content and it was only pennies, you could do so. Mm-hmm. And they would make that work because the payment and the transaction capability was actually in the infrastructure of the web. You didn't need a payment processor to go do the payment who needed to get paid.
Yeah.
That was the dream, except they couldn't build it. The technology wasn't ready, it wasn't there.
And that was almost 30 years ago.
That was 30 years ago. And there was 100 attempts to try and do this. And that was the ones that we went and researched. There's probably more that we don't know about. Mm-hmm. There's really 3 problems that stopped it. And we called it the micropayments trilemma. First problem was cost. If you want to make a micropayment and this kind of tap work, you have to completely remove the cost of payment processing, the interchange fees, the processing fees. Every time online you tap, it's probably 10, 20, 30 cents of interchange, and then another 3% on top with your purchase.
Right.
So if you looked and said, I want to get my ECG file, and I want to pay cents for it, that 10, 20 cents and the 3% on top, that's more than the actual file itself. The second problem is one of control. So today, if you charged up, let's say, Starbucks points on your app, right? So you can prepay for coffee, or you're a business and you're getting cloud services from AWS and Amazon.
Yes.
You can't spend your Starbucks points on the Amazon cloud services, and you can't spend your Amazon credits on coffee because the value is locked up in the other platform. What you needed was a solution that put control of the funds back to the micropayer, back to you. So that just like the coins and the cash in your pocket, you could be walking around and you decide where you're going to put that value. That was the second problem, control. And the third one was convenience. Think about every time you physically check out of any store, restaurant, merchant in person. Yeah. You have a plastic card, it's got a chip on it, you tap, you press a few buttons, you're done. And that's universal. It's all over the world. Well, it turned out in '93 when they did the first online kind of Visa card purchase, I think it was in a Burger King. There was a great video of it. Most people thought it was going to be a fad, and now it's everywhere. It's the standard.
Yeah, that was in '93.
That was in '93.
Yeah.
But online, the only place you get one tap is with a giant. Amazon, Apple, you've given them your identity. You've given them your account info.
Yeah.
They can expose a button to you and you press it.
Yeah.
But for all the other tens of thousands of merchants, you've got this painful process.
Right.
And you have to get it so that it's as convenient as the physical tap and go checkout. So those were the 3 problems that we solved. Cost, control, convenience.
Who does not want to see this happen?
That's a good question.
I like, obviously, with us and given our mission, we do obviously like focusing on who does want it to happen.
Yeah.
Anyone creating no, this is a good question. I mean, anyone creating like a viable, helpful product or service, right? It's like fantastic, they love it, and the end consumer loves it. The ones in between, depending on who they are, not so much. If you're a payment processor and you make your money by charging transaction fees, we know for a fact you probably don't like us, because we're not even saying, hey, you're collecting 3%, we've got a better mousetrap and we should collect 1%. No, it's like, we're like, hey, we've created a new technology, we're open sourcing it, we have a solution on top, do as many transactions as you want, we won't charge you because there's no cost base, there's no reason to.
Right. Yeah, so it's, okay, so what about the banking side of this now, right? Because banks make fees.
Sure. Banks are actually a great customer or partner. Banks provide many services that business and consumers need. Where do you park your money to invest it? How do you get treasury services, cash management, and the rest? So transaction fees are only a very small part of what a bank does. So the way we designed our solution, it was designed to both work with the banking system, to help the banks. And think about it, if you're a business and you're like, all right, I've got a bunch of content and services, I'm gonna make it all tap and micropayable. People can show up, no login, no subscription, registration, see what they need, tap, we get paid. Well, they're going to want a really nice seamless integration to the banking system because they have commercial bank accounts and a whole bunch of other needs. So we've taken care of that too. So banks are actually good partners, but a MasterCard or Visa or PayPal, maybe not so much.
Okay, so what about, say, I don't even know if this is a thing anymore, but like airplane points, like points.
You mean like loyalty programs?
Yeah, loyalty programs.
Yeah.
That is a very good application of this technology. You can use this technology if you want to pay in US dollars or Canadian dollars or any currency, but you can also use the same technology to create loyalty and reward systems that are completely interoperable. So that's certainly one of the places that we intend on going into. In the beginning, we're really focused on what I'll call simple, very valuable meat and potatoes kind of cases.
Yeah.
Healthcare, education for classes. I want to read an article. I want to watch a particular video. But you're absolutely right. I think one of the next things that we'll layer on, and we're already hearing it from customers in our pipeline, is where and how they can wrap a better loyalty and rewards program around that.
Yeah, it would make sense, I would think. Yeah.
It takes,
it's a good one.
takes a lot of character and discipline to co-found, build a company, grow it. Where in your life did you build the character and discipline to kind of be able to take on this task?
Yeah, this is, I would say, definitely one of those things where you take everything you learned and all the mistakes you made and all the successes and you pull it all together, right, for one last great thing. And I'm really happy to say that we've got a fantastic kind of joint leadership, a team where they all kind of possess those same qualities. So between them, our investors, kind of the community, it's been this massive effort beyond just me to push this forward. I'd say the first thing is it starts with love of creation. And when I started, I was originally in technology. I loved how technology enabled human beings and people to do and build what they wanted to do and make their lives better and make the lives of their communities and family better as well. And I liked that bridge, right, of where the two met. I was a little wild as a kid, so I actually started in the Canadian Army. And I was a signal officer.
Where'd you grow up?
In Toronto, right in the middle of downtown Toronto.
Okay.
So going to the military was an interesting choice. You don't see many people, right, from the middle of the downtown city, right, that choose that as an option. But I couldn't sit at a desk, but I wanted the challenge. I wanted to work on the edge of technology. And that was back during a time about 20 odd years ago when everything was moving from analog to digital. And the defense side of things was the same. And I got the bug there to go build things because every time you stop people from fighting, right, as a part of peacekeeping or as a part of NATO, the first ones to emerge are the entrepreneurs and business owners. everything's being destroyed.
Sure.
And they want to get back in business. And there's no working institutions, because those are being rebuilt as well, to talk to. So they'll immediately go and say, hey, let's go find the military unit that's there that has calmed everything down. And I literally had a number of them that would show up with a business proposal. I was a TV station owner,
Wow.
or I ran radio stations, or one of the first ISPs, and I want to get back into business.
That's fascinating, right? Wow.
And meeting these entrepreneurs, it made me realize I was in my late 20s, early 30s at the time. I was like, I'm not going to do this forever. What am I going to do next? Mm-hmm. And I just found that I ended up falling in love with every entrepreneur's story and going through the process of building something new, bringing it out to the world. And I was like, this is really cool. When I leave, this is what I want to do. So I left around 2008, and we all know what happened with the market. 2008,
Perfect
2009. Fantastic time.
Well, just to back up a second.
It isn't, to be frank. It's not, you could look at it two ways.
Yes.
When people were approaching you with these...
Through adversity, opportunity.
Exactly.
When people were approaching you with these ideas, where were you in the world?
So as an example, Bosnia-Herzegovina, during the 90s, obviously it's a very sad conflict. The UN was in charge. By the time I showed up during my era, it was just turned into a NATO operation. I managed to start sorting everything out. It was educational, especially in realizing what humans and people are capable of in the great things that we all have inside ourselves. And there's a lot of troubles, there's a lot of challenges in the world and with people and everything else, but you can also focus and say, wow, this is wonderful, right? And every time you meet someone, it certainly taught me that you can never see the potential that's inside them. And there's really a question of how do you unlock it? How do you enable them to do what they want to do? And the web and the internet and our market, they bring so many great things that unlocked a lot of opportunities, but it's been around for 30 years and there's a lot of structural things in place that actually are now preventing that kind of innovation, preventing that kind of opportunity, because things that were tiny have grown up to be giants. And giants do what giants will, and you end up with a market that's a little slower, a little more monopolistic, and it can suppress a lot of innovation that's happening on the ground. So if we can open that up and make it happen, well, that's a good thing.
I'm gonna ask you a question. For the listeners, we're in a very old building and there's old piping and stuff, so you might hear some weird noises, but the story's better than the noises, so that's great. Okay, here's a question I have for you, and it's right now in the world, right? It's kind of weird right now, and I see a lot of unmotivated people, especially in North America. But you've been in these war-torn countries where all these entrepreneurs who you would think would have, all this craziness in the world, but they have all this motivation and a passion for life, right? Can you connect those two things?
Yeah, I think so. The first thing is that I think, especially in the West, there's been a risk-averse nature to a portion of society and a portion of our education. So as an example, here in Canada, you look and say, how many people grow up and say, I want to build something, I want to be an entrepreneur? It's very, very little, and sadly, it's shrinking. And I think a part of that is due to, sort of inside the culture and inside many things, risk aversion is taught as a good thing or as the way to go. Whereas sometimes in war-torn places or older cultures, there's a recognition that you can't avoid risk. And in fact, adversity is something to be looked at with open eyes, sort of face and front forward.
Right.
And that is what actually shapes you and allows, great girls and guys to create things that are wonderful. And they learn and they grow through that adversity. And that's the first part. I think the second thing that is extremely important is I've spent over 25 years working on the cutting edge of digital and technology. And we've got another unfortunate trend where the messaging is that the digital nature of things is worth more than what the human being can do. And our point of view is very much the opposite, that there is a great amount of power and ability that human beings have. So even within our own team and within our own community, we will meet new customers, new team members, new partners. And sometimes there's an initial view that they can't do very much, right? The overwhelming force of technology and all these things means that they don't have agency. They don't have the ability to do that. And part and parcel with saying, yeah, we've got a micropayment product and it will allow you to open up to the following customers is a great question you asked, is a little bit of a message and a values point from our side, which is being like, no, don't take no for an answer. You can do it. You have that capability inside yourself. And one of the most wonderful things to see is we're early, right? We're working with our first customers, but we're doing our official public product launch later this quarter in March. But we're already starting to work with our first customers. And the nicest thing that has been is to see people, some sleeping part of them, wake up.
Sure, yeah.
And the most rewarding meetings are we'll go in and we'll sit down with the customer and say, this is what we'll do. And they will come out with stuff that will surprise and shock us.
Yeah.
Because their brain will start working. And they will see opportunities that we never dreamed of. And then they will start educating us.
Right.
And they'll say, you know what? If you've got this software fabric and this neat little pieces of widget-like products that I can just plug onto what I'm doing, what if I did this, right? And they'll imagine something new and we'll be like, oh, we never thought of that.
Yeah.
It's, you enable others and then it gets returned in kind. And that's a fantastic reward.
So, all right, now, how did this whole thing start though? How did you co-found this? What was the very beginning for you?
The very beginning was a little bit of suffering through problems that everyone else was and deciding to actually tackle it. When I left the military, I realized I didn't know how a business worked. So I spent a bunch of time doing consulting, right, and picking up that foundation. But after that, I left, and the first fintech I founded was around saying, how do you provide a better form of lending, but recognizing innovative companies for their intellectual property, their software, and their data, and actually treating it as collateral in a loan. And that first platform, which is now part of BDC's National IP Innovation Fund, that's what it turned into, woke myself and my co-founders up to this larger problem of how do you have efficient, verified trust doing digital trade without all of the complexities and all the brokers and all the things in the middle that are constantly draining fees, they're draining data, they're draining energy. And instead of being the enabling, accelerating force, right, it's now slowing everybody down. And that was a moment where we realized there was a problem. And this would have been around 2016. And as you know, blockchains had shown up and were starting to go. And we looked at those and said, well, that's interesting, but that's not the solution to this overall web problem. And what followed from that was a 6-year research and development journey, right from the math and the data structures and way down at that level. That was quite a proposition to go to the world and go to investors and others and say, we have a Mars mission. We're going to solve this problem on the internet that's been there for 30 years. And technology that removes the cost and the need for fees and all of these things. Unfortunately, today what happens within markets is a lot of innovation occurs within very narrow channels. So if you decide to go outside that, right, and you're on a new field and announce it, you're going to have a challenging journey. But we had a lot of help, a lot of adventures, all the usual ups and downs. It all worked by the time we hit early last year. And that's when we said, okay, we're ready. Let's go build the first fintech and a micropayment solution on top. And the response we got from the market was amazing. We weren't expecting that because for 6 years we were running into headwinds. We constantly had to convince, it was hard to explain, it was hard to understand. But then by the time we hit April, May of 2023 last year, we had something to the point where we put it in front of the first customer and they're like, yes, we want that. And it just flowed from there.
Timing was good.
Timing was excellent. I think that if we think of big market forces and trends, I mean, Paul, you'll remember this very well. From 2000 on, we had or even earlier than that, a combination of very low interest rates. So this kind of skewed risk in how investments were done, plus this wave of data and digital goods and services for free. Eyeballs for advertising, surveillance economy, and that. So that wave has now played itself out. So if you start looking now at what the landscape looks like, well, interest rates are back up. People have to make risk-based decisions on where money goes to. And so, efficient solutions that add value, that can make money for everyone, that's important. And much of the models that were driven off of free, ad-supported revenues in terms of eyeballs, or just off of subscriptions is not enough. And business models everywhere are feeling that stress. So the fact that we've shown up Reddit this time, it's certainly helpful. It's certainly helpful. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's been a great interview. Final thoughts with you, Paul, on your partnership with Hassan?
No, I mean, we're looking forward to coming out over the next, I would say, 4 to 6 months with some, pretty interesting announcements. We are already in the implementation phase of micropayments on the HealthGauge platform. Very easy to work with, as Hassan talks about, the convenience, your immediate access to the capital, to the use of the payment. All of that is in place. And so we're literally going to put it into our smartwatches, onto our portal platforms, and just start running it out from there. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Awesome. And private company right now, right?
That's correct. We are a private company, and super excited to be working with Paul and team, and all the other great customers and partners that we're starting with. This is going to be an exciting year.
Well, I'm happy that I interviewed you, and maybe we can follow up with you in a year or so and see where you're at. I'm sure I'll be following your journey in part with.
I'm sure it'll be long. I mean, this thing is blistering fast. It's crazy how good it's getting. And so I think, Karl, just on the AIML side, Hassan will be invited back several times to just keep giving us updates. Because as we continue to work together, the teams are just doing some great stuff.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Amazing. I can see the chemistry with you guys here. So, All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Obviously, follow us on all our social media platforms at FTM Invest, and FTMIG.ca is our website where you can find all the webinars with Paul and Ash. And take care.